Hello everyone, welcome back. In this session, I am going to teach you one new annotation in Spring, and the name of the annotation is nothing but @component. So this is a very famous uh, annotation in Spring and Spring Boot as well. So in this session, we will see like what is the component annotation, what is the purpose of this annotation, what is how we can define this annotation, or what is the syntax for this component annotation. Then we'll see what is the component scanning annotation, component scan annotation, what is the difference between component scan annotation and component annotation. Then we'll see how this component annotation work internally. And then last but not least, we'll see how we can access the bin. So going to understand before going to see how we can create the syntax for this component annotation, or before going to the definition of this component annotation, let's understand why Spring has introduced this annotation. What is the purpose of this annotation? So if you have remember the last two example which I had discussed with you, the example that was based on the setter injection and the example which was based on the constructor injection, in both example, as a developer, I was responsible to create the bin definition. So let me show you what I'm saying. So if you'll go to the Eclipse, and if I will come to this Eclipse, you can see this was the configuration file I had, and inside this configuration file, I was writing this two bin definition. So here you can see this is the one bin definition for the customer, and this is the second bin definition for the bank. And once I was trying to start my application, or once the container was getting started, then the container was coming to this configuration file to read the bin definition. And based on this annotation, at that bin annotation, they were trying to read all the bin definition in the sequential order. And after reading the bin definition, internally the container was creating the object, or Spring was trying to create the object for our class, or they will try to instantiate our classes. Now, now as a developer, I do not want to create the I do not want to write the bin definition. So as a developer, I'm saying I do not want to write the bin definition, and I do not want to write any explicit code anywhere, but I want Spring to instantiate my class or create the object for my class. So what I'm saying to container Spring, hey Spring, as of now, I was writing or I was providing with a bin definition, but going forward, I will not provide any bin definition to you. I'm not going to write any bin definition inside any of the configuration file. Even I'm not going to write any explicit code anywhere, but I want you to instantiate my class or to create the object for my class. Once I will tell these things to Spring, then Spring will reply, hey, developer, I understand your concern. So you do not want to write the bin definition. I don't have any concern. Don't write any bin definition. But if you want me to instantiate your class, or if you want me to create the object for your class, then you have to use one special kind of annotation on top of your class. Now, immediate I will ask, tell me what annotation I will use. Instead of writing the bin definition, if you are asking me to write one single annotation, I am ready for that. So the Spring will say, hey, the annotation which you have to use, the annotation is nothing but @component annotation. So if you are using the component annotation, then as a developer or as a programmer, you don't need to write the bin definition. So let's see what the component annotation. So as you can see here, I'm saying this component is the one of the annotation that allow Spring to detect our custom class or component class and automatically instantiate our class or create the object for the class. Okay. And by default, the Spring will create a single instance of that class. And by default, this entire process will be happen absolutely once our application is going to start. So once I will start my application, then what Spring will do, the Spring will start scanning our packages, or the Spring will start scanning some of the specific folder or directory. And if they will find any class which is annotated with at that component, then they will try to instantiate, or they will try to create the object for that class automatically, and for that I no need to write any bin definition. So they will create the object once they will find this annotation on top of any of the class. This annotation is known as class level annotation. This component annotation is the class level annotation. What does it mean? So if you see the last example here, so here if you see, here I was using one annotation, and this annotation name was at that bin. And this annotation you can see I was using on top of one method. So this was the method, and on top of that I was using this annotation. Again you can see here, this is the one method, and on top of that only I was writing the bin definition, or I was using the this bin annotation. So bin annotation is the method level annotation, but component annotation is the class level annotation. I mean to say, how I'm using the configuration annotation on top of the class, same as I have to use the component annotation on top of the some classes. So here I'm using the configuration annotation on the top of Java config file. Now I will create some class, and on top of that class I will use the component annotation. Now this annotation is the part of the stereotype annotation. This is also known as or considered as a stereotype annotation. And this is not the single annotation which is the part of stereotype. There are some more annotation which will come under the same package, or that is also part of the stereotype annotation. The name of that annotation is the service, repository, controller, and REST controller. This all the annotation we'll see later. We'll see about service, we'll see about repository, we'll see about controller, and we'll see about REST controller little later. Here our focus is only on the component annotation. So how we can define the component annotation? So as I said, you can see here, this is the syntax for the this is the syntax for the component annotation. There will be some class, and on top of that class, I'm using the one annotation. So whenever you are creating any class, on top of that class, if you are going to write any annotation, so what container is doing at the startup? Let me tell you that. So suppose I'm going to create one class here. So you can see here, I'm going to create the using one annotation, that is this annotation is known as component annotation. So this is the, and here suppose I'm going to create one class. So I can say public class A. So this is one of the class, right? Then suppose I'm going to get another class. So what I can do now, I will create one more class here. So we'll write at that component. Okay. And then I will get another class. The class is B, class B. Class B. And once the application will get start, the container will find the container, or the Spring will scan some specific package in which our class is available. And once they will find I can see this class is annotated with add that component. What they will do, they will go inside the container, and inside the container they will create the object for us. So suppose this is the container, or let me create the application context container. So suppose this is the container I'm creating here, and the name of this container, I can say I'm using the advanced container. So the container name is application context container, and inside this container what they are going to do, so they will create two objects, or they will create the two instances for this two corresponding class. So one is this and another is this, and then the name of this instance will be the small a and a small b. So here I can say small a, and here I can say a small b. So this is the two beans they will create inside the container, and this beans will one for the a and other for the b. So this will point to this one, and the second instance will point from here to here. So if you are using the component annotation, and at the time of container startup, what container will do? They will go inside the container, and they will create the instance for the class A and class B. Even suppose you are not using the component annotation, even suppose you are using the another annotation which I have mentioned here as well. Suppose you are going to use the service. So if you are using the service, the same rule will be applicable. Either suppose you are not using the service, either you are using the repository layer as well. The same concept will be applicable for this as well. So all the annotation which is part of the stereotype, if you are using any of this annotation at container startup, the container will create the instance of that class, or they will create the object for that class. Now, always I'm talking, they will scan the specific package. Now, how I can define which package they have to scan, how Spring will get to know. So I have some class, I have some packages, around 8 to 10 packages. Which package I will allow Spring to scan? How Spring will get to know in which package this class A and class B is available. So to scan the package, especially in case of Spring, we have to use one more annotation. And the annotation which I am going to use here, that is nothing but component scan annotation. So component scan, it will scan the component class at a package level. So this is one of the annotation. That this annotation I will use on top of the configuration file. And inside this package, inside this annotation, I am going to provide the package name. And once I will run the container, once I will start my container, what they will do, the container will come to the configuration file. I will show each and everything with example as well in the next session. And once they will find, okay, I'm using this component scan, they will read the package name. They will go inside that package. Inside that package, they will try to find out, is there in class which is using any stereotype annotation, either at that component or controller or REST controller or service or repository. If they'll find any class with this kind of annotation, immediate they will create the object for that class, or immediate they will instantiate that class. So the syntax for component scan, that also let me show you. So how we can do that? So this is the annotation component scan. Then we have to give the base package name, and then we have to provide the package name. If suppose you have more than one package, then I will tell you how we can provide the more than one package name here as well. Okay. Suppose if you are using this component scan, if you are writing your code based on the XML configuration, not based on the Java configuration, then there we have the tag context colon component scan base package, and here we have to provide the package name. So here you can see like only extra what we are using. So one tag, the tag name is context, and then everything is same. Here component scan. So here also you can see component scan. Here I'm writing the base package. Here also we have the base package, and then package name. So that's it. Now how we can implement this entire thing inside some of the example that I'm going to show you in the next class. I hope you are clear what is the component annotation, what is the component scan annotation. If not, just wait for the next session. In the next session, I will show you with complete example, and then it will be more clear.